the young boy's father. The boy is annoyed. What kind of 2-year-old question was that? He thinks, what does he want from me now? But there's no teasing in the man's voice, so he answers, green. Then he squirms as his father asks again, what kind of green? Colors can be warm or cold. Lines can be soft or hard. Space can move or be confined. The exasperated boy withdraws as the man shoves these elements on his palate and creates. And when he's full and satisfied, he inscribes his name I see red sometimes as tinged with brown, and when green is too light, I see it as light violet. So reveals Cesar Legaspi to a reporter. That is how his son eventually found him out, by reading an article on his father's handicap, for the man's works never betrayed him. Colors don't come from my eyes, the artist says. They come from my imagination. The colors from his palette are arranged in such a way that they correspond to the color chart. Heavily influenced by his peer, H.R. Ocampo, who introduced him to the concept of pulling a painting together by applying one overall color varying in intensity and tonal shades, Legaspi learned to combine the color chart's complementaries and split complementaries to gain richer tones. Thus, from theory, he would develop an uncanny mastery of form and tone. Painter Arturo Luz presents the proof in Legaspi's paintings. They can always be photographed in black and white. Such was the power of the man wielding the palette knife, and with it he took down encircling walls without and within. In his childhood, the walls were medical white. At the age of 11 months, he contracted pneumonia that progressed to epiema, requiring hospitalization until he was 4. It would recur again when he turned 28. Tubes gored his chest. He could feel medication fluid sloshing inside. Drawing became a refuge and an escape from boredom. As time went by, Legaspi muses, it became more of a delight and more an opening into other worlds. In his youth and prime, the restrictions were an art form that was steeped in a discipline of exact measures of perspective and proportion and the play of light and shade. He and his peers turned to other sources and to each other to express themselves in an art form that became a rebellion. On their canvas, they refused to replicate the natural world as it was seen, but manipulated it to suit their objectives. For Legaspi, painting became catharsis. His first mature works released the horrors and the eerie aftermath of the war. He vividly describes it. There was a monochromatic feel to the city. The pockmarked walls, chipped and cracked and broken. The rubble in the street. How can you escape that ruined stairway? At night you could see the moon at the top of the stairs. The war not only colored his art, it hardened him. Experiencing imprisonment by the Japanese for 8 days, he would later use this imagery when he was well into his set years, saying, "Style can be a prison in which we may be forced to do things merely because one's style demands it. I believe the demands of context have a higher priority. That is why I put much emphasis on life." Choosing life over artistic imprisonment, Cesar and his peers took flight for the world's art capitals. This spirit of exploration invigorated the Philippine visual arts that rose from the ashes of war, enriching the culture of a general public that was yet unaware of its worth. By the 1960s, Legaspi's son, now a teenager, offers an aspiring painter friend to take whatever you like. The unsold paintings were cluttering up the garage. The friend refuses politely, for the pieces were of Cesar's rock-inspired series, unyielding matter in more than a literal sense, and signaling the onset of the artist's difficult years. Wrenched from the womb of the Legaspi clan's common home, Cesar's household rents one cramped tenement after another. He also becomes father for the 5th time after a 9-year lapse from the last child. When he launches his first one-man show in 1963, he is 46. His advertising job, which he has held for 15 years, becomes a drudgery, but he hangs on to it for another 5. And yet, boxed into this frustrating arrangement, the artist's works began to move. Lessons in suppleness that he picked up from his first travels found their way into his canvas, freeing up his compositions. When he resigns from advertising, he signals his emancipation by teaming up with H.R. Ocampo and Arturo Luz in a financially rewarding 3-man show in 1968. The human form becomes his leitmotif as through it, he arrives at his art's maturity. Legaspi confides, "I've carried on a love affair with the human figure, wishing always to express everything through it." In Cesar's life, the one overall color into which he scumbled or lightly blended in the rest of his triumphs and frustrations was the nurturing bond with his wife, Betty, Vitaliana Calugdan. She successfully ran a meat retailing business, raised the children, and managed her husband's affairs, pricing his works, cataloging his press clippings, seeing to his travel papers, doing everything possible to keep him painting.
He's a very good husband, I can tell you. We are nearing our golden wedding anniversary already. And for that, I'm very grateful na siya ang naging asawa ko.
She's taught me many things, reveals the artist. She changed my bigotry about people, religion, food. Their bond remained pure, and together they transcended the hard times. "That painting is mine," Betty declares when her husband finishes the work he calls The Survivor.
Sariwa pa po ang sa isipan ko ang nangyari sa amin nung araw nung mga bago mag-gera at saka pagkatapos ng gera na kami ho ay walang kumikilala sa amin, may walang gumagalang. Medyo mataas lang ho kami ng konti sa Caminero. At gusto ko ipaalam pa sa inyo na itong karangalan na ito ay bunga ng pagtatangkilik at pagmamahal ng aking may bahay na si Vitaliana Calugdan. At sa kanya ko po inaalay ito.
In June 1990, Mang Cesar is finally conferred the highest honor his country could bestow on him. A little over a decade earlier, his paintings had begun paying more than just bills. In 1985, he professed a faith that brought down a wall he hadn't known existed. His daughter elaborates. Before, he could build a wall around himself. He could devote himself to his art even to the exclusion of my mother. But now he has opened himself up to people. When you're there, he really wants to talk to you. He enjoys the company. I think it has affected his art. Quite significantly, at this point, the painter exhibited works infused with elements of local folk art in a bid to visually represent the Filipino soul. In his mid-70s, with little sign of slowing down, Mang Cesar builds a huge studio, pleased that he could now make murals and convinced that age was not an issue. Through his rock-like tenacity, the self-effacing artist attained the recognition that his more vocal peers would reap much earlier. And through his zest for life, he cultivated the friendship of a younger generation of artists that would keep his works fresh and pointed. Pain rears its ugly head in a painting that the artist did in 1987 and in a fatal illness that unsheathes itself in 1991. Again, Legaspi reaches for his weapon until he can no longer wield it, and the slab of pain that was cancer would no longer fit into the shredder that was his art. For the rest of his walk, faith took over where sight was too weak to perceive. Glory rose from decay, and the eternal took over the mortal.
I would like to thank the Lord that He chose to use my hand and my defective eye to say what He wanted to say through my paintings. And that through these works of mine, I was able to bring to Him some glory.
All that national artist for painting Cesar Legaspi wanted was to draw, and he remained true to this pursuit.